You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
Hello there.
Hello everyone and welcome back to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. This is our second episode, and it is time that the Clone Wars has officially begun. We are getting into the first episodes chronologically of the Clone Wars animated series. I am Andrew, one of our co-hosts here, and I am joined once again by my lovely group of co-hosts. How are you today, gentlemen?
Oh, we're great, thanks.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Oh, I'm great, thanks, Andrew.
All right, awesome. So we are going to be tackling 4 episodes today. The first 4, well, okay, there's a little bit of a caveat. So we're going to be tackling Cat and Mouse, Hidden Enemy, Supply Lines, and Ambush. Now, there is one in between there, which is Clone Cadets. We decided that it would be best to move that one to when we discuss Rookies, which I believe is going to be 2 episodes from now because it is a prequel to that episode. So we're going to move our discussion of that episode to there if you're wondering where that is. But these episodes are kind of linked together. They really form 2 mini arcs. The prelude to the Battle of Christophsis before the events of the Clone Wars film, and then some issues with Toydaria in the latter 2 episodes. Before we get into the episodes, though, how are you guys? I know we've had a interesting last couple of weeks. There's been some new Star Wars stuff coming out. I know you all have been really enjoying the Lego Skywalker Saga game. If you guys want to just talk about that for a bit, go ahead, because it's really been the talk of the town the last couple of weeks.
It really has.
It's so good.
I agree with Jake. It's just a ton of fun. And, like, for me at least, Lego Skywalker Saga has done what Lego Complete Saga did for the prequels with me with the sequels in this game, and it's just, like, completely rehabilitated my appreciation and love for them. Because, like, as some of you listening probably know, online Star Wars discussion usually not the best route.
Yeah,
especially in a large community. And so I really got a lot. My sort of appreciation for both Rey as a character and from what I could take away from episode 9 kind of soured a lot.
Yeah.
So I kind of just never really discussed the sequels at large online, because, like, people just be bitching. But through playing this game and through re-experiencing the sequel trilogy in Lego form, it really sort of made me gain a new appreciation for Rey and her journey and just everything really that I grew to love about the sequels. And it's just a fun game in general, man.
Yeah.
It really is. I have to agree with you though. Like, I don't know. I feel like for the last couple of months now, I've been not necessarily growing out of Star Wars, but I could feel like the way I consume it being far different than I had been in the past. And then through playing this game, it's like, fuck it. I love Star Wars again. This shit is awesome. I'm happy. Life is good. And again, even with Rise of Skywalker, I hate that movie. It's so bad. But I had a blast playing the missions for that game, and I don't know, examining it through the goofy, not super serious lens of Lego was really healthy for that.
Yeah.
And it just made the whole overall experience far more enjoyable. And also, I have to give the game credit. It might have my favorite ship combat in any Star Wars game ever, which is
so
ridiculous
good.
because it's Legos, but it is. It's so good. It's so fun. I've never had so much fun flying around as an X-Wing blowing shit up. Like that was just awesome.
I'm
It's
glad
awesome.
it's so much better because that I thought was my least favorite part of the old Lego Star Wars games was the ship levels.
Yeah,
I just thought
those
they
were
were just,
rough.
they weren't well, they were very frustrating for me as a kid. And playing them back, they're just kind of clunky and not that great.
They have a lot of weird drag to them too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you have to actually put effort into moving the ships. Like how did I do this as a 5-year-old? Like what?
And they flip over a lot as well. The ships
Yeah.
like do the flip over thing. It's very sensitive to like that mechanic. I also have to just ask, like Connor, following on from the viral moment from last week, did you have you in fact been able to beat the shit out of Lego Palpatine?
No,
Lego Shmi
I have
Skywalker.
not. I have not been able to beat the shit out of Palpatine as Shmi Skywalker yet. I'm
But it's
planning
coming.
on doing it. I don't know when. I'm just going right now, at least in the game. I'm just going around the entire galaxy as Scavenger Ray because she's just so precious and just I love just all her dialogue. Just trying to 100% the game, but I will beat the shit out of Palpatine as Shmi Skywalker one of these days.
It's just gonna be episode 3 of the podcast. Is gonna be like an hour-long reaction of Connor playing as Shmi and beating the shit out of Palpatine.
There we go. Honestly, I do think once all of us have like gotten to as close as completely beating as we can, that we could do a special episode on it. I'm just waiting for myself to get to that point because I have loved every second of it that I have played so far, but I haven't gotten that far into it because I've been sick the past 2 weeks, and me with games recently, it's very like I have to be in a very specific mood and have to have energy to play them unless it's like the most mindless thing in the world and I really want to get invested into this game. So I just like haven't touched it in over a week, which is crazy to think about because of how excited we all were when we recorded our first episode last month. But I got to get back to it. The one thing I did notice is it took me a bit to like get used to the new combat because I was just so like,
Yeah,
I've played Complete Saga
The
so much that I
combos
have
are
like
interesting addition.
I have that just hooked in my brain. I'm like, oh, I'm using the Force and I gotta like throw shit everywhere and like aim stuff. So like that was interesting to get used to. But like Naboo and like Oda Gunga and like it's so beautiful. Just like those portions and then just all the stuff I've seen and like other videos. It's crazy how much they've jam-packed into this game and how many deep-cut references there are to certain things. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm loving
dude. There's a comic reference in episode 4 that I will not say, but like
They have
It's
Mr.
good.
Bones
They got
as
Mr.
a
Bones.
playable character.
Max
Yeah.
Rebo has the sexiest voice I've ever heard.
Dude, Max Rebo's voice is unironically incredible.
Yeah, I know
love
Connor
that,
said
man.
that his go-to character to play as was Scavenger Ray, but my duo is always Last Jedi, Grey Robe Ray, and Mr. Bones. It's always the two of them running around fucking shit up, and they're like the best duo ever.
I might do that once we're done recording.
Once
I
we're
might.
done recording, I have nothing else to do today, so unless I'm going to take a nap and edit this episode, I'm going to play more of it because I've
Hell
held it
yeah.
off for too long. So I need to do it because I feel like I'm missing out on all the fun, and I need to get invested. I'm like this with games for some reason. Well, I will get them and then have a blast and then not touch them for like months. And then
me
go
too.
back to them.
I do that all the time.
And I'm just
Same.
like, what is it? Like everyone else is like loving them, and I'm not like not enjoying them. But like I'll be like, I could play this, or I could do literally anything else. And I don't know. I'm just like that with game. It's been that way since COVID started. Honestly, like I had that phase where this is completely not Star Wars, but I had that Animal Crossing phase for like 2 months. And then I didn't touch it again for like 6 months. And that's just been...
I had that with
how I've
Destiny
been.
too recently. When the new DLC came out, I played like literally like I think I hit like rank 60 on the season pass in the first week of it coming out. I completed all the main story and the raid and everything, and I haven't touched it since then.
Jeez.
Yeah. I've done that with Dark Souls recently because I got the Dark Souls collection for Christmas and I installed them, and I've played a little bit of Dark Souls 1 and I just haven't like come back to it yet because usually I just wind up playing. I've revisited Animal Crossing recently. I was away for a month. My villagers were not happy about that.
Mine haven't seen me in like 6 months, so they're gonna be pissed.
Yeah, mine. I went on again for the first time in like 6 months the other day to visit a friend's island, and they were, they were like, "Oh, where the hell have you been?" I'm like, "I don't know, dude. I don't know."
In exile.
Connor's just sitting here like, what the hell is Animal Crossing?
What is Animal?
I'm
I was like that with Spider-Man PS4 as well. Like that's one of my favorite games of all time.
Oh my
and
god, I
went
would 100%ed that game in like a week.
Oh, I blitzed through that when I got the game.
So
I
much
blitzed
fun.
through it
It's
completely. It was so much fun.
One of the best games I've ever played.
Absolutely.
In terms of other stuff, we are gearing a bit closer to Celebration, which none of us will be in attendance for, but I think we're starting to get a good idea of what we're going to see in certain panels, which is nice to see. We also had a new Star Wars novel come out, I believe 2 weeks ago at this point. I actually started it. I'm about 8 chapters in, Queen's Hope.
okay.
Yeah, it's very
I
weird.
completely forgot.
Yeah.
I just haven't read
Yeah,
them.
I will.
and probably never
I'll say
will.
this: I've only read half of Queen's Shadow, but I decided I'll read Queen's Hope because it seems like it's a bit standalone. I think I should go back and read the rest of the trilogy.
Can't
Because
stand E.K. Johnston's
I
writing.
know. I know Jake is
but,
not a
like,
fan of EK.
The whole idea of Sister, though, is really dope. So I
Yeah.
might force myself to read this one and maybe use like an Audible credit on it. But
that was a big part of it for me, and then also like the standalone of it being like a story directly tied to Anakin and Padme's wedding. I'm like, okay, this intrigues me, and since it's so close out from Kenobi, and we're just starting this podcast, and since it takes place right at the beginning of the Clone Wars, I'm like, I'm gonna check this one out. So I'll probably still end up finishing it, but I think I would be enjoying it more had I finished the other 2 Padme books beforehand. But yeah, that's where I'm at this point. And then I know some of the like not preludes, but like one-off stories they have during the book about like all the other Skywalker women. People have really been enjoying them. So when I get to those, because I know Shmi, Connor's favorite, had a couple good stories in here. So I'll keep you guys posted if I get there. But then after Queen's Hope, I'll be diving full on into Fallen Star and the rest of the High Republic stuff that I have not gotten to yet. So
and Brotherhood comes out in less than a month,
yeah.
so everybody get hyped for that.
I will at least 100% be talking about that on
Revenge
this
of the
podcast
Fifth.
as well. Oh, it's gonna be
Revenge
so
of the
good.
Fifth will be when it's dropping.
Does it come out on May 5th?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
That's so sick.
That is smart.
And then we
Which
also
is
had
great considering it's an Anakin-centric book as well.
Yeah.
And then we also had that Kenobi promo art that looks straight out of like Revenge of the Sith's marketing from
2005.
Yeah. I just got transported back to that year, just like looking at that banner and just like getting the new images and like all the interviews with like Hayden and Ewan and like hearing more about like the series and like how they prepared. Like
The new
the fact
stuff
that Hayden Christensen like streamed the whole of the Clone Wars. He watched the whole Clone Wars and that
And
is just,
Rebels.
like, one of my- and
Yeah.
yes, and Rebels. And that's one
And
of my
Rebels.
favorite things.
And there's still people out here that's like, oh, I'm not going to watch Star
not-
Wars animation.
It's
Bro,
not
like,
canon. Yeah, it is. It is very like anyone that's still saying that, but is saying that while we're seeing what we're getting in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, like just by themselves, like it's very clear that they're pulling more and more from it now. If you said this 2 or 3 years ago, when the movies were pretty much acting like none of this stuff existed, then maybe I'd say I agree with you. But it's very clear that Clone Wars and Rebels are 100% considered on equal playing ground as all the other shows for a lot of the people at Lucasfilm.
As they should be.
As they should be, because they were created to be, literally, when Clone Wars and Rebels were coming out, they were the only Star Wars we had for a long gap of time.
Exactly.
And they were for a whole generation, the Clone Wars was their introduction to the franchise. So
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why
I say what a lot
doing
of people
this
don't realize
podcast.
is so much of the reason that the prequels are so beloved by, I mean, us, the generation that grew up with it, is because Clone Wars kept us engaged with that shit for years
Exactly.
after the trilogy ended. Like, we still, even after all 3 movies were complete, we had years and years of additional stories with pre-existing characters, new characters. We saw new planets, we saw old planets. It's like, that is such a huge reason why our generation, who is arguably the most prominent voice in the Star Wars fandom at the moment, just because we're, finally blossoming into financial responsibility and all that, and, stupid financial studies and everything about, fandoms and how they're run. It's a whole topic we don't need to discuss in the podcast because it's boring as hell. But that's the Clone Wars is literally why that is the case. Like, why the prequels are regarded as like the thing right now, and why we're getting content like Kenobi, and we're gonna get all these flashbacks to that era in other shows and shit.
Exactly.
And so I think it's wild that people still want to sit here and say like, nope, none of that matters. And like, no, like, it matters because look at us, we're all examples of that.
Like,
exactly. If Anakin Skywalker can do it, then so can you.
Exactly. For people
That
that
needs
like
to be a shirt.
for people
That needs to be. We need to make that a
Needs to be
shirt now.
Yeah, just like a drawing of like Anakin just like sitting at like a desk, just like binging through like Clone Wars or Rebels, and just like have that as like a
It
hashtag.
needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need merch.
That would be rad
for like
if
people
Anakin Skywalker can do it.
that like say that their favorite characters are like Plo Koon or Kit Fisto. Do you really think that's just because of the minute combined screen time that they had in the prequels? No, it's because of the stuff
in the
like Clone
prequels,
Wars.
they were glup shittos.
Yeah, it's literally like the reason why so many of these characters and so much of the stuff in the prequels got the love and development it deserved. And I've been around the block in this community long enough. Like, nowadays, people are like, oh, how was your favorite movie not Revenge of the Sith? When I first got on Twitter, even saying that would have gotten you like the looks you get now for like enjoying the sequels in some communities.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
the still
tangled
get those
meme.
looks because I say my favorite prequel is Phantom
Yeah, you
Menace.
say
And everyone's
Phantom
like,
Menace.
the hell is wrong with you?
It's like, oh, like I saw one of the TikToks. It's like, oh, put your finger down if Revenge of the Sith isn't your favorite movie for like unpopular Star Wars opinions. I'm like, is that like the standard now? Like, I still thought it was Empire, so I guess I'm becoming like the old man in the community now. I'm the wizened old Ben Kenobi in here. But yeah, if Hayden Christensen is coming out here and saying, yeah, I watched all of it because it really gave me a more of appreciation for the character that I've been playing.
the character that he
The
created.
character that he created. It's saying something, and
Oh, can't forget Jake Lloyd. Can't forget
can't
Jake Lloyd.
forget
Hope
Jake
he's
Lloyd.
doing
No.
good.
Cannot forget Jake Lloyd. But like this iteration of Anakin is one that Hayden brought to life, and the fact that he's going to these shows and these stories for inspiration of how to portray the character this time around is very telling. And Hayden's the one saying it right now, but I'm sure that Hayden's not the only one that took this approach for these roles. And I'm certain he won't be the last one to do so if we keep getting more and more shows like this, because we're getting to the age where new Star Wars that's coming out is going to be influenced by these shows in particular, because some of the directors and some of the people working on the shows probably grew up around the time that the Clone Wars was first coming out. So this was their Star Wars for them. We saw with The Acolyte, Leslie Headland was saying how she was so influenced by Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace!
And you would,
Yes!
if she
happy.
said that, if she directed The Force Awakens in 2015 and she said that, she would have been crucified. But now
Oh,
that is
absolutely.
like, yes, 100%. I love seeing this. we need more, creators like this. And it just shows how everything has changed. And I am all for that. And I think with that, we should get into the first bit of Clone Wars content.
Yes.
So Cat and Mouse, the first chronological episode in the Clone Wars. This and the next episode we will be talking about, Hidden Enemy, take place before the movie. So they probably should have been the first thing we talked about. But I think it would be weird if we didn't start with the literal pilot movie of the series. So we're doing it this way. It aired in season 2, but chronologically is the first episode of the series. It was directed by Kyle Dunleavy and written by Brian Larson. The moral of the episode was a wise leader knows when to follow. And we start off, the opening crawl tells us that this is above the Battle of Christophsis, right before the events of the Clone Wars film. So this one, because I think I've only ever seen it before our watch through. I've only ever seen it the one time when I first started my chronological watch around the time Force Awakens was coming out. So this I think was only the second time I've seen this episode, and I didn't remember having many strong feelings about this episode beforehand, but I actually quite enjoyed it. I was surprised how tense it was at certain points. I really loved the tactical aspects of this episode, and it was great seeing the relationship between Yularen and Anakin develop over the episode, and of course the threat that was Trench, seeing him for the first time. What did you guys think about this one? Because I have a couple thoughts.
It's weird as hell seeing Trench without
the cybernetics,
robotic face and everything. Yeah, I forgot that he ever didn't have that. That was weird.
I really enjoyed the episode. It's probably the most Star Trek episode of Star Wars, because it's an episode that's themed more around ship to ship combat and
perfect.
tactics
I didn't even think
and stuff
about
like that. And it's even better when you consider that the stealth ship that's being used it's functioning much in the same way as a submarine. And submarine,
they even use a lot of those underwater submarine sounds during the combat too.
And the dialogue, feels very submarine specific. It's really cool to kind of get an episode that's basically Yularen and Anakin bonding. We get to know more about Yularen. We get the sense that he's a storied military commander already, who's had his own run-ins prior to the Clone Wars. And then there's Admiral Trench, who's he's really fun. I just love him. He's one of the best original villains, I think, of the Clone Wars, because he's got such a unique presence, and I love that when he speaks, he does that little with his mouth because he's a spider. Yeah. It's great. He's kind of a sort of prologue to Thrawn, in that he's basically this tactical genius, but except he's more ruled by his ego than say Thrawn would be. But yeah, his design is great as well. The fact that he's a spider and all that, it's amazing.
It's again like I said last episode with Zero of it. He's 100% a George Lucas character, but with Zero, where I thought that was kind of a negative, I think it's a positive for Trench. I was not a Trench fan when I was first watching the show, but I really enjoy him now. He's just got the whole. He's just again who's the general from the Clone Wars with the movie with the most not subtle name of all time?
General Loathsome.
There we go. Yeah, it's kind of like that, where he's just very clearly the most obvious villain character ever, but it's so fun and so hammy in a way that I really enjoyed it. But also, the episode did a really good job of building him up as a big threat and a big deal, hyping up his military background. And when they said that he was killed in Malastare years ago in combat, and having this aura surrounding him of they're literally fighting a ghost, and then the fact that ends up happening again later on in the series when he is presumed dead in this episode and then comes back 5 or 6 seasons later, spoiler alert. I just really enjoyed his presence in this episode, I guess you can say. Another person I really enjoyed seeing is, as brief as it was, always great to see Bail Organa. So I like
Yes.
seeing him a lot in these earlier episodes in the timeline. I think he showed up right at the beginning and maybe at the end, if I remember correctly. Just to be fully transparent, we were supposed to record this last week, so I watched these episodes a week and a half ago, but then I got sick, and then we were all had a lot go down last week, so we delayed it a couple days. So, but again, I did have a really fun time with this episode, and it's another very typical Anakin story of he's not thrilled with how Obi-Wan wants to do it, so he goes against Obi-Wan's plan and his wishes. And he's combating with Yularen's role in the
More
story
traditional
as well, more
sense.
traditional
Yeah.
style of military combat, and we see them go at it as well. Another thing I pointed out about Anakin and Obi-Wan in this one is I sensed that their relationship was more master and apprentice than brotherhood, because obviously at this point in the timeline, Ahsoka is not yet Anakin's Padawan. Do you guys think that this episode took place before Anakin got knighted, or do you think Anakin is a Jedi Knight at this point in the timeline?
I
think
believe
he
he
is.
was knighted directly after Attack of the Clones.
I
You're
think
Or that was hinted at in
you're
something.
probably right.
pretty sure that's what Brotherhood is all about. Brotherhood's gonna like explain the novel. Brotherhood is gonna explain how he gets knighted. I think he's not long come out of being like knighted as a Jedi Knight, and his and Obi-Wan's dynamic is still kind of grounded in the like master and apprentice like relationship. So like, and then when Ahsoka gets in, that kind of like arrives, that kind of frees the two of them up to like maybe let their dynamic evolve more. But yeah, I definitely got the sense that they were still kind of in that master and apprentice territory.
Feels like there's a bit of like growing pains there too, because it's like Obi-Wan obviously in this episode is reluctant to let Anakin do his thing, and Anakin only really wants to do his thing because Obi-Wan doesn't want him to. And so like to see as the episode goes on that Anakin's plan, albeit reckless, was successful, and both Obi-Wan and Yularen like kind of recognizing that and like coming to terms with the fact that okay, that's just how Anakin is.
Yeah.
That I feel like kind of contributes to that. And also, we don't have an official timeline of when Clone Wars actually begins. I personally have always felt like it was probably 6 months or so after Attack of the Clones. Just if we're
Yeah.
going off of like, I don't know, Anakin's hair length.
Well,
Yeah.
But
I will say this: the bit of Queen's Hope I have read, there is a lot of Anakin's scenes revolve around his mixed feelings on commanding or becoming a general in the Republic Army. So he still is probably going through those growing pains at this point of like figuring out how he is going to act as a leader. And we definitely see a lot of that in this episode itself. Trying to figure out like Anakin's way of doing things, and that we eventually see very prominently throughout the entirety of the show. So
Definitely.
yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was a little bit after, but again, you said the hair length, but I think it might be a thing of how you made the point last episode, Jake, of maybe that was just a thing that they did for just using the same model over and over again to keep the
model
budget.
purposes.
Yeah, model, and not just like, oh, we can assume that Anakin had multiple different looks, but this is just the one we saw throughout the entirety of the show because it would be cheaper to just have it at this length than to do the short hair and then eventually make it longer and longer and longer.
That said, the author of Brotherhood has said that Obi-Wan still has his mullet at the point of that book. So
Oh, well then it's an automatic.
and he
11 out of 10.
even said it has grown longer from Attack of the Clones, obviously. So some time has passed when that book takes place, and that is confirmed to be the first meeting of Obi-Wan and Ventress, which in this episode, obviously, or no, the next episode, but
Next episode,
it's hinted at that, like, you know, the little history that they've had.
Now,
So
then that asks the question: why did you cut it, Kenobi? It's so beautiful. Now, Revenge of the
Fighting
Sith
purposes,
Obi-Wan,
maybe.
great look too. I'm not discrediting it. That's my
Mullet
childhood
Obi-Wan
Kenobi
was
right there.
the best.
But mullet Obi-Wan.
As someone who's always had
Ugh.
really long hair, it does get in the way.
Yeah, I can also attest to that.
I cannot, because every time I've tried to grow my hair, it has not turned out great. So I don't know what it's like to have shoulder length hair, but Obi-Wan Kenobi rocked it like no one else. We brought up the stealth ship. I really think it's a really cool design, and the way that the cloaking added to a lot of the tension in this episode was a really nice touch. But we also see for the first time, canonically, I think in any Star Wars property, the tactical droids. What do you guys think of these things? Because I have always had very mixed thoughts on
I hate
the
them.
tactical droids. I think they're really annoying.
I really hate them.
I don't mind them. I think they're all right. Like they look a little weird, but I like the droll way they deliver lines. I also like
The kind of like really robotic looking motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I fucking love those guys.
Yeah, I love that they have like tactical literally written on their head in Orabesh. There's like a shot later on in The Hidden Enemy where you literally see the Orabesh, so I just looked it up. I was like, oh, it literally says tactical. That's kind of neat. But yeah, I like the tactical droids. I also, like you said, Andrew, I really like the design of the stealth ship. It's kind of like a almost serpentine, but also kind of like a pencil. And like, I watched the behind the scenes featurettes like before like we came on to record this, and like it's hilarious how much Dave Filoni talks about how he didn't want this to like contradict a line from Empire, because like when the Falcon clings onto the Star Destroyer, Captain Needa, the Imperial commander in charge of it, like he says, "Oh, that's impossible," because like, an Imperial officer says to him, "The ship no longer appears on our scopes." Impossible. No ship that small has a cloaking device. And it's like in the featurette, he says to George, like, "What about that line?" He's like, "Oh no, this what this ship does. This ship has a cloaking device." He's like, "All right." So, and they had to like. If you listen in the episode, they literally go out of their way to have Anakin say to Obi-Wan, "Well, a ship this small doesn't usually have a cloaking device." I just think it's really funny that they just got so hung up on that one line of dialogue. It also kind of shows how much like Filoni cares about like making sure everything kind of like flows smoothly and things connect, which is admirable. But yeah, stealth ship, really cool.
Yeah. I especially just loved the tense sequence when they were when the hyena bombers were coming towards them, and the clones are reading like how close they're getting, and it's just I was just like, fuck, dude, I don't know what's gonna happen. I was like, shit, are they gonna decloak?
Yeah,
that was a
on the
great
original
scene.
Yeah, it's genuinely tense stuff.
That was one of the moments I wrote down. Like,
yeah,
it was such a good scene.
And I liked the clones that pop up in this story as well. Like, there's that newbie clone who's part of the crew called Spark, and then you have that little interplay between him and the older clone who's like more experienced in this. And also the design of the clones who pilot the stealth ship, they're really cool. They look like
they really are.
Yeah, I had to write down a quote from one of the clones. Only quote I have written down for this episode, but one of them said, I think it was the veteran to the rookie, saying, "You learn pretty quick that when you serve under General Skywalker, you're always on the offensive," and that is very telling of Anakin's leadership in this episode. And we're just seeing the beginning of it, and seeing the beginnings of various trademarks for Anakin's character that we see throughout the duration of the series.
Yeah, and the finish is pretty spectacular as well. Like Anakin literally diverting the missiles that Trench launches so they all like impact across his flagship. Very spectacular. Really well done too.
This was basically the Clone Wars version of Maul, where like we all thought he was dead. I thought for sure Trench was dead. So like when he came back, when it was rumored that like they've been playing around with making him come back, I was like, fuck yeah, do it. Actually, no, I don't remember, but I was just like, I was kind of open to it because I'm like, it's Admiral Trench. This guy's pretty dope. And so like, because I thought he was done. I thought he was dead. Like when that, and I didn't realize that happens in season 2. I thought it happened in like season 1. Yeah. I misremember the early seasons so much. Actually, no, I misremember pretty much every season except for 6 and 7.
I just misremember it because they aired out of order, and that really bugged me. Too. And yes, this one was produced after season 1, but chronologically, that's the first episode, the very beginning. So I just find it weird that they made the story in that way. Like, oh, here's a random prequel to before literally everything we've seen before, smack dab in the middle of season 2. Like, I just found it very odd.
It is sort of jarring to see like better animation come first, and then we get like
then go back to the episode after
right
this.
Season 1 animation. You're like, what the hell?
Like season 1 clone faces. You're just like, oh, that's different.
Like across all 4 episodes, the production values vary. So you have like really intimate animation that's deliberately intimate settings with animation that's deliberately reusing settings, keeping like, things sparse, and then you get to like supply lines and everything's just like everything's blowing up like, so much. Yep. Before I forget, I'm going to mention the lead designer Killian Plunkett's quote about Hidden Enemy and Cat and Mouse, because it's really funny because he says about Hidden Enemy, oh, it's a prequel to a prequel of one of the prequels, and we're making another episode which is Cat and Mouse, which is a prequel to that. So we are definitely prequeled out right now. Very amusing.
Definitely. So we end with Trench being defeated, or is he? Like
yes.
We don't know. He might show up again later.
I gotta say it. I have to say the line, no one's ever really gone.
Oh, there we go.
I have to say it.
Yeah,
Star Wars loves bringing people back from the dead.
Even if
top tier line.
And then
Trench.
Killing them again.
Violently.
Yes.
But we'll get to that when we get to season 7. God knows how long that's going to be.
6 years from now.
6 years from now. But
it's going to take forever.
Again, the tactical scenes I loved. The stealth ship was great, and I loved seeing the early dynamics of how Anakin leads versus how Yularen leads, and then eventually getting to where they end up becoming a pretty good team throughout the war, which I really enjoyed. Does anyone have anything else to say about Cat and Mouse before we move on to our next episode?
Other than it's really, really cool and tense. That's my overall thoughts on it.
All right.
Pretty good. Yeah, I don't know.
So let's move on now. Hidden Enemy. This one actually took place during season 1, the 16th episode to air, but the second chronologically. Directed by Stuart Lee, one of the guys that has done a lot of episodes of all of the animated shows. It's a name I definitely recognize. Written by Drew Z. Greenberg. The moral of the episode is truth enlightens the mind, but won't always bring happiness to your heart. This is once again during the Battle of Christophsis, and I think Hidden Enemy isn't the right title for this episode. I think Among Us, the Clone Wars, is actually the title they should have gone with, because this is what this was.
Oh my God.
The best way possible.
Oh my God. I hadn't even thought of that, and now you said it, that makes so much sense. Like, I might try and edit together a video where like they go in, the bit where Rex and Cody run into like the mess and they see all the clones and just like play the starting music.
I have seen one where I didn't realize it was from this episode, but I saw a TikTok like last year, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I was in the med bay during that. I was in the kitchen." I'm like, this is literally Among Us. And I'm watching the episode, I'm like, oh my God, that's this episode. But I loved this episode, if I'm being honest. I was hooked.
This episode I thought was great.
The whole,
because I really just
one of my
how
favorites.
It sets up just the dire situation that we see at the beginning of the Clone Wars movie, and just the mystery aspect of it, especially with like the interrogation of Slick's Barrack. That was great.
Yeah, and it
also
really
love how it centers around Cody and Rex.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was
Yes.
so good. Like, this is literally our first Rex and Cody episode we get in the timeline, and first of many.
I love
But
their
I
dynamic.
love it. I love their dynamic. I love Rex's. There are days where Rex is my favorite character, period. So I really fucked with this episode. We start off, Anakin and ObiWan's fleet get ambushed by droids. The droids obviously knew their plan. This is right before the events of the Clone Wars movie, because we see the Battle of Christophsis actually taking place, whereas last episode it was above the planet. And then there's some suspicion that there's a spy in their ranks. One thing I want to point out, just during these scenes, Cody called the Separatists seppies at one point, and that made me very uncomfortable because I don't remember that ever being used ever. And I did not like that, Cody. Never do that again.
There's a lot of that in season 1. A lot of the clones using like nicknames
The
for
war
things. Like they call,
jargon.
yeah, a lot of war jargon, and they ease out of that a little bit as the show goes
Like,
on. I think.
Clanker's
And, like,
stuck. I'm fine with that
Yeah.
one. Seppies,
Clankers.
Cody? No. That's
Yeah.
like
I
you
feel
start-
like they use seppies quite a bit, don't they?
I don't remember it. I just remember hearing it, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, it just... maybe they used it, but I hadn't... Again, I haven't seen a lot of Season 1 in at least 5 years, so... Again, I think this is only the second or third time I've seen this episode, which is why I was very, very shocked with how much I loved this episode. Another thing that I just wanted to point out, even though it is a season 1 episode, so the animation is not as impressive as we saw in Cat and Mouse, and as we'll see in Supply Lines when we talk about that in a little bit. But Christophsis, we really only saw it in daytime during the Clone Wars movie, and it's a cool looking planet on its own. But there's a couple shots where they show it at night, and I thought it looked awesome.
Yeah.
I have always loved Christophsis as a planet. It's so visually appealing.
It's not as cool as Teth, but it is.
Dude, Teth is fucking great.
It is.
That is awesome.
It's like a great looking planet. Ventress shows up, which we briefly talked about. We get, of course, Obi-Wan's great line, Ventress, and I thought this mission would be unpleasant.
Classic.
I
Man's
love
down bad.
he's down bad, and I said all
He's
caps.
down horrendous.
The look on this
so-
man's face when Ventress takes her cloak off, I rewound it about 4 times. Because
That Kenobi smirk.
this man, it's just, their dynamic has always worked for me. And I just love how literally every fight they have, it's just got this, like, absolutely intense, you can cut the sexual tension with a plastic spoon. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like Anakin's just
It's
standing in the corner,
steamy.
just like he's like, should I give
Why are you
guys-
doing this
why are
to
you
me?
doing this?
Master? Why are you doing this?
I'm
to
in
me?
hell right now.
Oh, just wait till we get to the Satine arc. That's
Oh no.
that is that times a million.
For sure.
But like we said, one of Slick's men is suspected to be the traitor in the ranks. They gather them all up, and I wrote, of course, they gather the most incel-looking clones that they could find in the army, as who we think the suspect might be. And then this is when I said, wait, hold on, this is just Among Us. There are some pinup posters of Padme in this like little clone mess hall. What's Anakin thinking here? Like, in his mind, like, these men got these posters of my wife around here. That's another thing that you see a lot in early Clone Wars, is just these like random things on the wall. And I remember there was a bit of controversy in season 7 because the Bad Batch ship originally had those inside the ship, I believe, and then they edited them out when they revived Clone Wars, because they had them in the
The unfinished
the
reels.
unfinished reels, yeah. And I remember some people being like, oh, why are they getting rid of it? I'm like, dude, really? Like, you're getting upset
People
over
were
that?
so mad over that, and it was so funny because it's like that contributes nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
to the overall story.
Literally nothing. It's
Like,
like,
it's so
Wrecker's so much
inconsequential.
better if I know he's jerking off to Padme during down missions. I'm like who gives a shit, man? Like, but we get these.
Star Wars fans have to ruin everything.
They do. And another thing we get all these clones. They're getting interrogated. One of them was in the infirmary. One of them was in the med bay. One of them was. They all had their excuses, and then we come across a clone named Chopper. And
Dude, when I
That was
heard
weird.
that, I was like,
I was
what?
like, wait a
Like,
second,
wait a minute.
something's up here.
I didn't know what to do. I was like, my brain's not working. What the hell is this?
I heard Rex say Chopper. I'm like, wait, hold on, that's not the droid. What happened
Yeah,
here?
and then, like, the droid just, like rolls around the corner. It's like,
So in
Chopper's-
my mind, I'm like, all right, well, there's no way he's making it out of this episode because I don't remember
There
this
can
guy
only be
showing up
one.
again. But I guess we'll have to get that battle down the line. But
Yeah.
we do find out who the imposter is, and I loved the reveal here.
Same.
Where Slick,
brilliant. It was brilliantly done. Yeah, with Slick being revealed as the
he
traitor.
messes up.
I also,
How did
I
you know
wish
that
you hadn't noticed that, sir.
oh, the delivery from D. Bradley Baker was like perfectly sly, and I love that that when he escapes as well, he does like a roll just to make him look more slippery. I mean, he's already slippery enough with a name like Slick, but
Yeah.
I just love that little motion. I also love, before I forget, the fact that like Chopper has droid fingers that he's made into a little necklace. It's like, huh.
That was
It's like-
awesome.
It's awesome. I'm amazed that they put it in there because of what it's referring to. It's like, because I was watching that, I was like, wow, like with what that's referring to about like soldiers, how some soldiers would like cut off ears and fingers and like have them as keepsakes. It's like, that's dark. That's dark, and it just kind of shows how the show was. They were already experimenting with kind of taking the audience to like a darker place necessarily, and kind of like showing certain aspects of war. Because I know that George Lucas was involved in the story of this episode in particular, and he said to the team like, "Oh, let's have a story about a clone that goes bad." And it's like, for whatever people think of George Lucas, he has a real understanding of like what war does to people, it seems, and like the politics of like war and how it affects the soldiers and stuff. All this very real stuff that kind of bleeds into the narrative and makes it feel more authentic, while you've got all the lightsabers and like blaster fire going off.
Yeah, it really makes it feel like a war story, which is the best compliment you can say about a sci-fi fantasy animated show that aired on Cartoon Network in the late 2000s. Like, there is so much like little stuff about this show that I just eat up, and that is one of the moments like that. Another thing I want to point out is just the shot of all the clones looking at Slick right before the reveal.
Beautiful.
Great.
That has to be one of the most iconic shots in all of Clone Wars too.
That was another
Yeah.
one where I saw him like, that's from this episode too. Like, I had so many moments in this episode in particular of like I didn't realize all of these scenes came from this episode, and it was just so great getting to revisit them in this wider context. And just the fact that I just was eating everything up was just the icing on the cake. We see Kenobi's favorite General Loathsome shows up again, which was a nice little touch to show that this is before the Clone Wars movie. And then another Among Us reference here. Slick literally hides in the vents. This man vented.
Oh my god!
I didn't even
my
pick up
God.
on that.
Again,
Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
pick up on that.
I was having
Literally
a
an
blast
episode of
when I
Among
was
Us.
writing these notes. I was like, okay, so now I know what the guy that made that game was watching when he made.
Dude, George was ahead of the curve.
George literally, where's his royalties? This is this is Among Us. Rex and Cody, they eventually catch on. They find Slick. They bait him out of the vent, and then they start having a pretty intense fight. I was surprised of how tense the combat was. Kevin Kiner, again, shout out Kevin Kiner. The score here was great. I noticed they played portions of the Coruscant speeder chase music from Attack of the Clones during this fight. I had to write that down.
Okay.
Love that music cue. So I was like, oh, that's where that is. Because it took me a second. I was like, there we go. Really good choice to use there because of how frantic that music is, and just using it for this one because the clones are really, they're at this point in the war, the fact that they have to fight one of their own that they've been in the war with, and it's one of their brothers, like,
yeah,
it was pretty heavy.
And there's also that line from Rex when they walk into the mess and they see all the clones there, and Rex says to Cody, "The only people in here are brothers." It's like that's quite an effect.
Yeah.
It's an affecting line, and it also, like, this whole episode is really effective because it continues the thread that we'll later talk about in Ambush when we discuss Ambush, because of the kind of like theme of the clones being individuals, all having their own kind of like ideas and thoughts about the war. And like Filoni says this in like the behind the scenes featurette. He talks about how this kind of like puts pressure on the Order 66 question, because at the time no one knew how that panned out, and seeing the clones having personalities and thoughts and wants and desires of their own, like Slick wanting freedom, you start to kind of see, oh, so this Order 66 thing may be more complicated than it first appeared. And it just kind of like, it's D. Bradley Baker as well deserves a lot of credit in this episode for making all of these clones feel distinct enough so you don't feel like you're listening to the same guy having a conversation with himself like times 10. It actually feels like all these clones have distinct tones and cadences in their voice, like different,
he always has done an excellent job with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, for it being so early in the show, I was surprised how much freedom and humanity were brought up with the clones and really made into a bigger concept at large. Slick pretty much comparing the clones to being enslaved. It was pretty heavy at this point. He was offered freedom and money by Ventress, and it was enough to betray his brothers. And then there was a great line once Slick is defeated of, "I think freedom's going to have to wait," which that was like, I was really vibing with this plot. And then we end the episode, and it pretty much directly leads into where we see the Clone Wars movie begin, which I thought was a really nice touch. Again, I was shocked how much I loved this episode. It was an absolute blast, and I cannot wait for more clone-centric episodes like this one, because what a fun episode this was.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a really tense mystery storyline, which is like, and it's really balanced well with the more like action-packed elements. So yeah, it's a really strong. It's probably one of the better episodes of season 1.
Oh yeah, for sure. Jake, any thoughts before we move on?
I definitely agree, like, the way, like, that tension is built, and I don't know, for me, I don't think it clicked so much when I was a kid, like, realizing, like, how, like, tense these first couple of, I mean, obviously, like, the last episode was later on, but this one's still season 1. They really do, like, they keep you on the edge of your seat, and I remember I was watching them, like, 2 nights ago, and I was like, obviously I knew what happened, but I was still like, holy shit, like, what's gonna happen? But I knew it was gonna happen. And so, yeah. I don't know, it's just really interesting to see that from what literally is a kid's show. Like, I feel like people don't really talk about that quite enough.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So now we move on to our third episode. We begin another one of these like little mini arcs, because this episode, Supply Lines, is a prequel to Ambush, which was the first episode aired in the series, which will be our last episode we talk about today. This was directed by...
Basically one long arc of
Essentially.
Ryloth.
But this was directed by Brian Kalin O'Connell, which is not a name I'm too familiar with, but I'm sure we'll see him pop up again because so many people directed these episodes. This was written by Stephen Melching and, I'm going to butcher this name, I'm sorry, Aghan Mahoney. Sorry about that, buddy. The moral, stop me if you heard this one, where there's a will, there's a way. I don't know. Where'd Filoni
I like
get
to
that
refer
one
to
from?
this episode as the I'm a gun die episode.
Yes.
Because I was like, where does this guy show up? And the second I watched it and I saw and it cut to him, I literally screamed like, holy shit, I'm a gun die. Like, I was just like, where is this man? Like, he is one of the most
I feel so
tuxedo
stupid.
Jedi ever to exist.
I've been calling him I'm a Gundy for like my entire life.
I
didn't
just
realize it
got
was
the
I'm
pun
a gun
right
die.
now. I just
like,
got it
really?
right now.
Shit.
God damn it, George.
It
Yeah,
gets
you know
better.
that one was George too, because that's such a George.
I'm gonna
Thing to
die.
do.
Get it? I'm like,
It gets better when you consider that his clone commander is named Captain Keeley.
oh my
Oh, son of a gun.
George.
George, you freaking madman. I love you. I forgot. I didn't realize how much this really delved into the political atmosphere of the Clone
Oh, this
Wars.
is a very
I
political
forgot.
episode.
Oh, and I love
really
it for that.
loved it.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I love it. I love it because it has Jar Jar in it as well, and the way it.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to talk about how this episode portrays Jar Jar. But I just love the politics of the whole thing, and I love how it balances that with like the on the ground stuff.
See, I will be completely honest with you. I love a lot of the political episodes of Clone Wars. The last third of this episode I thought was awesome. The first 2/3 did not work for me that much. And I was shocked because I love Ryloth stories. So getting to see Cham Syndulla again for the first time, I was like really hyped. I'm like, I'm going to love this episode. And I didn't remember much of Jedi Master Die beforehand. I was like,
I just
"Ooh,
know him
who's this
because of
cool-"
his name.
I was like,
That's
who's this cool
literally it.
looking Nikto Jedi?
Yeah.
But I really liked his stuff, and his voice was really cool. But there was something I felt was missing, and I'm still trying to figure out what that was. Maybe I just am not a fan of Toydaria, but I don't know. I'll figure that one out. So the basis of this episode is
I'm surprised.
you're surprised that I'm not a fan.
No. I'm surprised that I love Toydaria. I think just
Oh.
through these first few episodes, I'm just like, shit, I actually really like the Toydarians.
See,
Maybe
Yeah.
I
how they're
went into
portrayed to
it.
be a really noble and like compassionate people, and like the only Toydarian we knew of before
Watto.
Clone Wars was Watto.
Yeah,
See,
my intellect's on the work.
what I will say,
money.
what I will say is, I did not remember liking King Katunko, but I really liked him in these 2 episodes.
That man is the GOAT.
He
I
is
love that guy.
Such a good leader, and I very much liked his character. So the main portion of this episode was the Republic trying to aid the clone forces on Ryloth, but trying to get over this separatist blockade. But Toydaria is, of course, neutral in the Clone Wars at this point, so they have to go through those hoops to get through that. There's an admiral earlier in this episode. I said, Admiral voiced by James Arnold Taylor with a French accent asked the Jedi Council for aid on Ryloth. So I guess
That was
that's...
so weird.
Yeah.
That was Jay. Oh, okay. That's why it sounded so familiar. I was like, who is this guy?
He was just talking to himself because he was just talking to Kenobi and having him with that accent. It just didn't really make me uncomfortable, but it was really, really odd to listen
That was
to.
another one where I just immediately was like, all right, that's James Arnold Taylor, and he's got himself an accent this time. There was...
Yeah. Also worth noting, so Robert Atkin Downes, the actor who voices Cham, also voices I'm a Gundai. So you've also got him talking with himself in scenes.
I still can't believe this man's name is I'm a Gundai. How did I not put that together?
Dude, I just got General Keel. I just got Captain Keeley, so I'm with you.
I like the Wikipedia article. His name pronounced like I'm a Gundai or I'm Gundai directly means I'm going to die, reflecting his death in the episode supply lines he appeared in. Thanks. Speaking of which, the followed by Wikipedia for the Republic podcast. Thank you very much for that. That was awesome to see today. Of course, it's on the day that Twitter, as we know it, might be the last day we see Twitter like this. But
Oh God,
who knows?
Elon's not gonna do anything. He's too stupid.
Too busy smoking weed and naming his kids after coding.
Yeah, fucking math problems. Freaking math equations.
Weird as hell, dude.
yeah. Thanks,
how
Dad.
is that man the richest man in the world? That's when you know that something's wrong. If
We're in the dark time.
Elon
Well,
Musk,
he got all of his money from Daddy. Same with everybody's good old boy Donnie. Like, they just got money from their parents, and then they were able to make more money because they already had a shit ton of money. They don't do shit. They don't know how to do shit. You leave that man home alone for a week and tell him to cook for himself, and he'll be dead.
yeah,
We're getting real here on
Yeah.
For the Republic.
for the Republic,
everyone.
we're talking about our favorite Clone Wars character, Elon Musk. He's also my favorite Rick and Morty character, but that actually happened, so we're going to move
What?
on now. Yeah, he showed up in an episode, and he played, I think his name was Elon Tusk. I'm
Yep.
not joking. Yeah.
Literally, yeah. And like they say, and they explain away like because it's an alternate version, and they say it, and Rick says, "Oh well, we need to put a team together, and regular Elon can be a little bit controlling."
Yeah. That's a George Lucas character again, right there, Elon Tusk.
Elon Tusk.
Also,
Do you know, while we're on the subject of people who are sucking, do you know who else sucks? Lot Dodd, the senator for the Trade
I was going to
Federation.
bring him up.
Yeah.
Because
no.
that
You know
guy.
who's worse? Orn Frita.
Oh my god.
We got I
fucking
said
hate that
we got Orn Free Ta, we got Lot Dot. I said if we just get 0, we'll have all my faves in one episode.
If we really want to talk about when Orn Free Toss sucks, everybody read Lords of the Sith. Phenomenal book, but he sucks in that
Yeah.
one as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Like when he's giving that impassioned speech to Kinko Tunko, in the back of my head, I'm like, dude, you're just safe in Coruscant. You don't really care about Ryloth. Like Cham Syndulla is like fighting like his butt off on the surface.
I need to
And what is he doing?
reread Reports of the Sith
Lords
because I
of the
can't.
Sith was the first canon novel I ever read, and
I read that one last year, and it is so good. I adore that book.
I read that.
it was my
junior
favorite.
year of high school. I love that book.
Yeah, it was my favorite canon novel until I read Into the Dark. But like, I don't remember how much of a bitch Orn Frita was in that. But I assume he's a big bitch.
I remember.
I will say it's
Sheev treated Vader
exclusive.
like absolute shit in that book.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not exclusive to that book that he's a bitch. He's just a bitch in
He's
everything.
A bitch in
Yeah.
everything. You know who isn't though? Bail Organa. So it's
Yeah.
great that he's
Bail
the main
Organa's
character
the
this
goat.
episode.
Bale is great.
And
Bale is like
Underappreciated
he's the saving
him
grace of the
so
Senate.
much.
Jar
Apart
Jar
from Padme.
tags along with them, and there was a point where I went, oh no. But it wasn't that bad. So I actually think that there are certain pairings where Jar Jar to me in the Clone Wars doesn't work with. I know people like those Mace Windu episodes. I don't. But Bail Organa and Jar Jar, I thought it was a fun pairing. I'm going to be completely honest.
I agree.
I'll take Jar Jar with anybody. I love Jar Jar. I'm
I love
not even
Jar Jar
joking.
too.
I'm wearing a Jar Jar Binks shirt right now.
That's all.
There is
Like,
one.
I want to see I just want to see some like wacky ass story where Jar Jar meets up with Rey.
Oh,
Isn't
I would
there-
love that.
And it's in the Age of Republic comics. Isn't there a Rex and Jar Jar team up?
Yes.
where Jar Jar
Yes.
has the saber. I
Okay,
remember
fun
that
fact
one being
about
that was fun.
that is how I display my Jar Jar Binks Black Series figure. Is I have him holding a spare blue lightsaber that I have.
That's so cool.
That is actually really cool. I don't remember whose saber it was.
It was a
But-
fallen Jedi,
It was a fallen
like a random
Jedi.
ass Jedi that died. Yeah.
But I read those Age of Republic comics, and I was like, "What is this gonna be?" But I remember really enjoying that one. Yeah, but like,
Well-
although this was Jar Jar, not voiced by Ahmed Best, which is
Oh no, it was.
it was.
It was.
Yeah,
it was.
Ahmed Best. Ahmed Best voices him here, and I believe also in season 6 and in season 1.
Oh, what
there's
episode am I
there's a
thinking
patch
of?
during. You are probably. I think you're probably thinking of the Blue Shadow virus.
You know
arc.
what I'm thinking of? You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of the
Dude,
Lego
the Blue
Skywalker.
Shadow Virus arc has one of the best glup shittos in Star Wars, Peppy Bow.
You know what
I'm
I'm thinking of?
fucking
I'm
love
thinking of
I love her.
I'm
about that.
thinking of the game. I'm thinking of the game because he's not voiced by
Yes.
Ahmed Best in the new game. He's voiced by who voiced him in a couple random episodes in season 1. So that's what I'm thinking of.
It's the same actor who voices Bale.
Oh,
Phil Lamar.
Phil Lamar.
Phil Lamar.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Samurai Jack himself.
It definitely did have some interesting voice choices.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I will say that a little bit of a tangent, but like having Daniel Logan play Empire Boba is probably the weirdest
Yeah,
one.
That is
I
nuts.
agree.
That is nuts.
I'm still not used to it.
Daniel Logan played Emperor Boba and not D. Bradley Baker.
Yep.
That is
Yeah.
That is very weird.
That's really weird.
But like on the subject
I know
of Jar
Billy
Jar,
D voiced Donald Glover Lando too.
Yeah.
Which
yeah,
that threw
Yep.
me off.
that's wild. That is wild. I was going to say about Jar Jar though. What I love about Jar Jar in this episode, and kind of like sort of mostly across the whole Clone Wars arc, I love how he's portrayed, and I loved hearing like how Dave Filoni talked about him in the behind the scenes stuff because he says Jar Jar's kind of at a point where he's able to use the perception that he is kind of clumsy and uncoordinated to his advantage, and that he's a lot cleverer than you think he is.
He really
And that
did that in this episode.
really yeah, and it's really reflected in this episode because like he's not like a bumbling idiot. It would have been so easy to write this episode as like Jar Jar being an incompetent moron who keeps fucking up, who keeps setting Bail Organa back because a lot of the fans didn't like Jar Jar, but they don't do that. They actually instead make Jar Jar like a character who's caring, who cares about the people of Ryloth. He wants to make sure that this mission is a success, and he actually pulls it off. He actually like his little ploy to distract Lot Dodd works,
That
and
was-
and it's not even like he messes up and breaks stuff.
with
He literally
the stalling plate scene, I was laughing my ass off.
It's great.
I was having so much fun with that. You know what I also love about Jar Jar in this show? I just love his look. I love the little like purple tie. Like
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Clone Wars Jar Jar's look. But
yeah.
we
It
get-
gives you so much. It tells you so much about his character without you needing to hear him speak.
But Lot Dodd, however, I could go the rest of my life without hearing him speak. Not a fan. I'm not a fan. I don't get like there's a certain thing about how did the Jedi not realize that Palpatine was a Sith Lord this whole time? How did they not realize that this man is not very clearly working with the Separatists? Like, oh, I'm neutral. Of course you are, buddy. Like the most clearly corrupt senator like in existence. He literally has an evil look on his face 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
like
and, like,
smirking at Bale
Still
and Jar
allowed
Jar.
in the Galactic
Every-
Senate.
line that
Every
killed
moment
me
it's
the
just
most-
going
Storms
his
out
way.
like, you will not get away with this.
Yeah, the line that kills me the most is when like I think Bail Organa mentions Newt Gunray as part of the Trade Federation, and Lot Dodd goes, Newt Gunray is an extremist. His views do not reflect those of the Trade Federation. And I just got like flashbacks to like all the basically that line being utilized in like real life because it's like
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Ooh.
George once again like being ahead of the curve there.
Remember though, Star Wars wasn't political until Ryan Johnson directing a movie in the franchise. So, yeah.
Can't hear that
Number
with a
one.
straight face.
George Lucas, the guy that literally said the Clone Wars is about the Iraq War, and compared Palpatine to
And the
Nixon.
U.S. is the bad guys,
Yeah.
and people want to be like, no.
Literally,
La, 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 la.
but yep, never.
I refuse to listen.
I refuse to comprehend.
But there's a lot of politics in this episode. We get an early look at it, and I did like seeing the Senate debates aspect. Like that part of the episode did work for me. I just felt
That was cool.
I
that
just
was
felt something was missing.
surprisingly cool.
I'm gonna have to work that out in my mind of what wasn't working for the first part of the episode. But the glimpses we get on Ryloth and seeing General Dai's forces, I really like the armor of the clones and Captain Keeley in particular.
I agree.
They had some
I was
really
gonna
cool
say the
looking clone
exact
armor.
same thing. Oh, they look really cool. It's
Very
a really
intricate.
cool color. Yeah, like the design on his helmet and everything, the patterns, and even like his hairstyle. It's really cool, like really unique, and it makes losing him quite impactful because he feels unique. He doesn't feel like a cookie cutter clone commander that they've brought out just to die. He kind of feels like he has personality, and and that's also reflected in him seemingly going down but getting up and making a last stand with General Dai against the droids.
Same with Amagundai, though, because his robes have those really cool, like, I don't know, it's like a planet pattern or something on it. But again, like, they put that intricacy into both of their designs to, like, make you feel connected to them just to kill them both by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah,
I
the
not-
last
how did
the
I not
last
figure
third
it
of the
out?
episode goes hard,
Yeah.
like with the action and the impactful.
We'll definitely be talking about that. We get more instances of Katunko being just the dopest king of all time. You know,
Fucking
we're
G. I
neutral,
love that.
but we'll help bring you some supplies on this one ship. There's a moment with I thought was exceptional droid comedy where they discovered the explosives. I was dying.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, there's no
clones,
clones.
just
here.
explosives.
No clowns,
Explosives.
just explosives.
Explosives. Everyone dies. I'm like,
Boom.
beautiful. Matthew Wood, you beautiful, beautiful man.
I've heard that he would talk about like how he would add in a lot of the droid humor last minute just to like surprise the development team as well, because the droids don't have mouths, so he can just have them say whatever.
We brought up how
A lot
shitty
of sense.
Orn Free Tie is in this episode.
No, just not in this episode.
just
Just everything.
Everything.
Yeah, and everything.
However, objectively, the most attractive Star Wars character. Moving on.
No, this is Ray.
I mean,
Yeah.
Ray Skywalker slander. Get the
Boy's
hell out
got
of
like
here.
4 Leku, so
Is Orn Free
Bruh.
Tie playable in Lego Skywalker Saga?
No, but you know who is, and you know who's more attractive? Ayla Sakura.
It's very true.
you know who should be is fucking Ochi of Bestoon. They got his goddamn model in the game. You can see his hologram. They don't let you run around as that lovable dipshit.
That guy's an idiot because of Greg Pak, and I love him, and I really dude. His ship's playable, and he's not.
Yeah.
This is a
You
travesty.
can fly the
Yeah,
Bestoon
appears in,
legacy,
like-
but you can't play as him.
If he ever
I'm-
appears in live action, he needs to just he needs to make his appearance kicking down a door.
And just
Well,
saying,
he
I'm
was in
okay.
Rise of Skywalker, but we're not going to talk about that. It's like, where's your daughter? And they're like, not on Jakku, I'll tell you that. He's like, I'll take your word for it, but I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna kill
I'll
you.
take
anyway.
your word for it, and I'll take your life.
Can you play as what the hell is his name? Dominic Monaghan's character from Rise of
Beaumont
Skywalker?
Kin. Love the cat. I
Kin.
like the character. Absolutely useless in the role.
Can you?
You could have just given it to Rose.
Yeah, really. Is he playable though, or is he not playable?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I unlock him, I'll just beat the shit out of him as Rose because she deserves to.
I would say I wouldn't know because I absolutely hate Beaumont Kin. Hashtag worst character in Star Wars.
You misspelled Ponkrell.
Well, I mean,
Man,
someone on Twitter
I'd
told
throw
me he's the best
Ponkrell a
character.
birthday party before I shook hands with Beaumont Kin.
Okay, fair. Touche.
Ponkrell, what a guy. We'll get to him later.
What a
Oh,
Okay.
we'll get to
We'll get
Ponkrell.
to him later.
Yeah.
But like I said, Jar Jar with the plates, hilarious.
Jar Jar with the plates was legendary.
I
love
really
that.
also loved the look of like the floating dining room table, like
Yeah.
very Star
Yeah.
Wars, very Toydarian. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, the Toydarian culture is really well portrayed here. Like, I
It
like
was
how it's so
really
distinct and how they're like, because there's another thing that's like talked about behind the scenes. They designed Katunko to have this like kind of implication that Toydarians, they prize having big bellies, and like the bigger your belly is, the more in shape you are, and that's why like King Katunko has such a large belly in relation to like the guards. I like how they
loyalty.
yeah, and it kind of like it having a distinct society of this alien race. It makes Watto more interesting as a character, because having that contrast, it informs like him as a character. It informs that society. Like, oh, we, because like it's easy to get like misconceptions about like, oh, all of these aliens in Star Wars, they're all just a particular way. Like, oh, they're all just like scumbags, or they all just work for this person. That's not the case. They're like, there's plenty of them that don't do that. Their society might not even be represented accurately by this one character who's appeared in the films, and that, I think that's one of the most amazing things about Star Wars.
Yeah, especially this show, getting to see different people of species that have not been portrayed in a positive way in the movies, but getting to see, other characters that are way more heroic and way more lovable. Has always been one of my favorite parts of the series. But my favorite part of the episode was 100% our real first heroic death of the series, chronologically, in Captain Keeley and our old favorite Jedi Amagun Dai sacrificing themselves in combat. Dai's last words were literally, "The Twi'leks will live to fight another day." I think it's a great example of what a Jedi should be, sacrificing himself to defend a oppressed people. And
I love the way he delivers it.
I love the way he delivers it. And right as he dies, his comlink comes in of the news of the supplies arriving. Powerful as hell.
That actually gave me chills watching that unfold.
Same. Yeah, especially with the Kevin Kiner's music, it's very impactful. Like, it's so atmospheric as well. Yeah, exactly.
Like, I was shocked how well that worked for me. It was like, it really hit me, especially because we only see this clone and this Jedi in one episode. But it worked, and they didn't get much screen time, but if we do an in memoriam around here, I mean, they're going to be the first two entries. So R.I.P. General Dai and Captain Keeley. You will be missed. Legends of Ryloth, honestly. But they get the supplies there. Lot Dot can eat shit. In Tordaria, King Kaduko says he's open to joining the Republic eventually. We get more of that in Ambush. And the episode ends with the line, "The people of Ryloth shall endure." So, yeah, there was a lot to go in with this episode. A lot of the political aspects. We get our first glimpse at Ryloth, which, again, Ryloth, Cham Syndulla, all the Twi'lek Rebellion stuff. It's one of my favorite Clone Wars storylines. I do think that there are better episodes in the series that focus more on the political stuff and more on the Ryloth war. But it was a solid episode. It was probably, I would say, maybe my least favorite of the ones we watched today, but it was by no means a bad episode. And there was a lot of stuff that definitely did work for me quite a bit, especially the stuff with the sacrifice at the end. And Bail Organa is just the GOAT, so I will eat up any Bail Organa stories. Anything else before we get to our last episode of the day? And it's a big one.
Nope.
All right.
I got nothing.
Season 1, Episode 1, Ambush. It's directed by Dave Bullock, written by Stephen Melching. The moral is, the great leaders inspire greatness in others. This was the first released episode of the entire series, not the first made, I believe. Which again, the way that they released the show is just weird to me. But I can tell it's the first episode of the show because the animation looks different and the opening fanfare is not the traditional one that I'm so used to. So that really threw me off. I was like, what the hell? It's like when
Speaking of, anybody that skips Clone Wars intros like automatically goes to prison.
no, you're not allowed. Well, I'm not saying you're not allowed to watch this show, but you need to rethink your life choices because that's a crime against humanity.
Go home and rethink your life. I want to go home and rethink my life.
Is Elon Sleaze Bogano playable in Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga?
No.
I don't think so.
That is the worst news I've heard all day, honestly. That's worse than Ochi. But yeah, I was very thrown off by the fanfare being different. It kind of reminded me of when they started messing with it in season 7, and I was like, "What are you doing? Like we have something perfect here. You don't need to go changing it." But it worked. It is a bit more stripped down, but we do still get Tom Kane's narration. Is it the only episode where it's like this, or was it just this one? I guess we'll find out next week, because the Malevolence arc is the episodes that are aired right after this one. But we are continuing the Tordaria plot. We get King Katuko showing up again, having some dealings with Ventress and Count Dooku. And Yoda is on his way to Tordaria with 3 clones, and what do you know? His forces are ambushed, almost like that's the title of the episode. But it's nice to get a Yoda episode this early, and this is one of the more, I'd say, iconic episodes of Clone Wars. I don't know if it's one of my favorite ones, but it is definitely like synonymous with the series, I would definitely say.
It was always one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember this episode the most growing up because, it was the premiere episode of the Clone Wars. And just, rewatching it, I was like, damn, this is a really fun and really solid episode. I'm going as far to say, this is a top 10 Clone Wars episode for me.
I agree.
Has, the perfect blend of humor, action, and wisdom in it. Dude, one of my favorite moments that I freaking died at was at the end when Yoda says, "Strong you are in the dark side, young one, but not that strong," and just fucking force pulls Ventress's sabers towards him. I just started fucking dying laughing.
It's great. Yoda's portrayal in this episode is pitch perfect because it's a great balance of his more whimsical, kind of impish side that you see in Empire, but you also get the more serious
100%.
version. And then there's also the nurturing side as well. And that's why I think this is a great way to start, because in a way it's an encapsulation of how the light side and the dark side of the Force operate, how the players of each side, what their tactics are, what they believe in. And it also kind of makes a thesis statement on the show. It begins one of the core themes that goes across the whole show, and that is the clones and how they are people, because I know George was involved in this, and I know George obviously was heavily involved in a lot of the scripts, but I've always had this kind of lingering feeling that when he originally wrote the prequels, part of his idea of doing the clones and writing the backstory that he did with them was to kind of portray them as almost like biological machines. They were almost kind of programmed to be obedient. So they weren't really, in his mind when making those films, they weren't really people. But then as the film, after the films kind of went on and the clones started to take on personalities of their own in the Clone Wars 2D series or the comics, that kind of changed. And then he was like, oh, well, actually, when you think about it, yes, they do count as people, because if they're a biological life form, the Force resides in them. And it's one of my favorite lines in the episode, and indeed in the whole series, is when Yoda turns to the 3 clones that accompany him and he says, clones you may be, but the Force resides in all life forms. I think that's just a beautiful moment.
Beautiful moment. Yeah, I know, because I was doing some research for this episode after I had watched it, and they had said that it wasn't originally supposed to be the first episode that aired, but close to the premiere, they decided to change it to this one because they all really enjoyed the episode. And Filoni said, we all felt it would be a really strong way to start the series with a really fun Yoda episode. And I believe this one was screened a couple months before the episode aired. Because it aired in October, and it says it was shown to the Television Critics Association press tour on July 11th, 2008, and then later in September. So they were obviously very proud of this episode if they were showing it months ahead of time for the show aired. And I think Filoni's right. It is a perfect way to start the series. You start with this one, you get Yoda at maybe his best in the whole series. You get a great clone story, getting the take your helmets off scene, which we will get to. It's a perfect way to begin the show and touch on a lot of the themes that we see, and it's also a very fun episode. I got a lot of Kurosawa influences from this one, and it's definitely, when I say iconic, it's had the test of time. I know a couple of years back they did that anthology book, the Stories of Light and Dark, and this was one of the ones that got adapted. This is the only story from it I've read, and I remember really liking it quite a bit. It's definitely, you said top 10. I don't know if I would go that far for me personally, but it was definitely a very, very good episode. And I think having this and having supply lines as a great prequel companion piece to it really worked on the rewatch.
It works super well. And I think it's because I grew up with this episode as a kid, because Clone Wars came out 2008. I was 11 when this episode aired. Probably, was I 11? I don't know. I was 10 or 11. I was around that age. And so I just remember this episode's, there's 3 arcs in season 1 that I just remember specifically standing out to me as a kid when Clone Wars premiered, and it was this episode, it was the Ryloth arc, and it was the, as I like to call it, the Ayla Secura arc, for obvious reasons. I don't have to say why. And just Ambush, I just think is just such a fantastic episode, and like Don said, it's a wonderful, I think, encapsulation of what the Clone Wars is.
Yeah, because it really just kind of well, as I said, it sums up the light and the dark in how Ventress and Yoda act, because it's literally both of them competing to try and win over King Katunku, who really he's already, I feel he already has made up his mind at the start. He's already leaning towards Yoda, and he never really wavers. He just entertains Ventress because he's a considerate alien. He actually like we said, he's a good ruler. He listens to people, but it's very apparent that Ventress is not being entirely honest with him. And that's what I was saying about how it encapsulates both sides, because you see Yoda continuously is honest and uses his mind to constantly outthink the droids, and he tries to pass that on to the clones, whereas Ventress constantly resorts to deception to try and win over Katunko. She lies about Yoda getting a fair fight. She resorts to aggression when Yoda continuously outsmarts her, and then there's the whole thing at the end where she resorts to outright violence, and it encapsulates how those actions often are the undoing of the dark side. It's that reliance on anger and hatred and deception that often undoes them. They often defeat themselves, and the Jedi are often the Jedi just often help that along and just kind of go, I could have told you that.
Yeah. I mean,
dude, I didn't realize. Okay, because I'm googling it right now. I wondered what happened with these with the three with Jack, Reese, and Thyre.
I know where this is going.
I think were oh, okay, Jack was killed by Yoda. Dude, Jack was killed by Yoda on Kashyyyk.
Oh,
No.
Like he was the clone that got beheaded alongside Commander Gree, which is like, god damn it. I fucking love that scene, but like, this
that breaks
hurts.
my heart. Oh, I hope.
Oh, Fire
was
is
one of
also
the,
yeah. He reports to Palpatine in
Fire
the Senate
reports-
chambers.
Mentioned
Palpatine
Sith,
and
yeah.
Reese. Trying to see what he does.
Do we know about him? I don't know if we know anything else about him.
My headcanon is that Thyre didn't actually follow Order 66 and he spotted Yoda in the tunnels and let him go like that day. Like if they do from a certain point of view, Revenge of the Sith, they should absolutely do like a short story that's just Thyre letting Yoda escape because he was never Order 66'd.
So, Wikipedia says Reese has only showed up in this episode. But it also states that he is a member of the Coruscant Guard. So yeah, I guess this is his only story. The only stories listed are Ambush and Stories of Light and Dark, which was the one based off of this episode. So he does not have the tragic story that the other two have.
Say alternatively to Don's point, rather than Thyre maybe assisting in Yoda's escape, you could always have a story that he went to the Jedi Temple with ObiWan.
I would like that.
Got killed by Yoda so that you could have all three of these clones that Yoda helped at the start of the Clone Wars. Yoda also was the one that killed them at the end of the war.
That would be heartbreaking.
I would pain. But like you're known as the king of pain, Jake, so like it's not
I always have to think about the darkest, most upsetting outcomes, so
I don't know.
you really do.
You telling me that
appreciate it.
Jack was the one Yoda killed.
Yeah, Jack and Gree were the two clones
took the
that
wind
point
out of
their
my
blasters
sails.
at him in Revenge of the Sith, and then he just does that backflip and decapitates them both. Yeah, Jack is the one
it.
alongside Gree. I know, right?
That's devastating.
I'm never gonna look at that scene the same way again.
No, me neither.
Side
And
point, Commander Gree's armor is freaking awesome looking.
Oh
The
yeah.
Kashyyyk clone armor is just incredible.
Gorgeous. Yeah. But now I don't want to talk about the rest of the episode because I'm too upset.
Yeah, I've traumatized. I just decided to look up. Oh, were there any more stories? Because like I just remember never hearing
That's
about them.
Jason
again.
Fry's fault. I'm reading it. He's like, yeah, I imagine that he was there on Kashyyyk when Yoda got the Force vision, and then they retconned it so that he's the trooper. Thanks.
Oh,
Thanks.
nice.
thanks, Jason.
Jason. To cheer myself up, it was incredibly awesome in that scene where Yoda just completely decimated the super battle droids with the Force.
Yeah. Dude,
And-
seeing Yoda just be a freaking warrior is phenomenal. And
The
like
droids
I know
reacted
that
to him and beautiful.
like I know I shouldn't. I mean, there's two parts of me that are like, yeah, it kind of, it kind of signifies the downfall of the Jedi, that they're becoming warriors and generals, and it really shows that how they lost their ways. But like at the same time, it's just so fucking cool seeing them be warriors and generals.
Having him hop around on all the battle droids and like redirect their shots, like the shot where he jumps on the AAT cannon and just stares into the barrel and then like just like tricks them into shooting their own tank. That's amazing. It's just like, yeah, Yoda's all the action scenes of Yoda in this are brilliant. They're all really fun and energetic, and I love the lines he has in this as well. Like when he says, "Size and everything, smaller we are, but larger in mind," and then the clones just like look at each other like, "Do you know what he's talking about?"
Yoda is just...
Well, it's interesting when you think about too how it's like the three clones in Yoda versus like Ventress and her army of battle droids that she has there, and they're still able to come out on top.
Yeah,
Such
again,
a
it's
Star Wars.
It's a classic
story.
Star Wars story. You've got the underdog good guys fighting against like the tyrannical, overly mechanized army, and they win. The good guys win because they rely on their their minds, their humanity.
And their resourcefulness.
Exactly.
And then we already touched on it, but the cave scene with the clones and Yoda, it's one of the defining moments of at least the first season, the whole show, honestly. More emphasis on these clones. They're not just faceless soldiers that we see turn on the Jedi. They are individuals that we grow to love so many of them. Again, the work D. Bradley Baker does, he's in a different class in my eyes. But then
Agreed.
This quote from Yoda, again, we brought up one of them, but deceive you, eyes can, in the Force, very different each one of you are. Really just setting in stone, okay, this is the type of show that this is going to be. You know, these aren't just going to be cool-looking clones that we don't really know, and they're just going to be in the background and do some cool stuff. They're going to be real characters, and they're going to be, in many cases, some of the best in the entire series. And I loved everything about it. And then them using the lessons that Yoda gave them to use their minds to defeat the droids and outsmart Ventress was, again, great. Like, getting to see Yoda lead his command like this, I don't think we get that many where he's this front and center. So getting to see it right away is a great way to start off the series. Of course, Katunko, like we never knew we knew he was always going to just join the Republic, and of course he chooses to join them. Yoda just embarrasses Ventress with strong on the dark side, but not that strong. Beautiful scene. But then another thing I wanted to point out, because we, of course, had Christopher Lee as Dooku in the Clone Wars movie. This is the first time we hear Corey Burton as Count Dooku, technically. And I think he does such a phenomenal job in the role that sometimes he's like my default of who I hear as Dooku and not Christopher Lee. And
Yeah, I kind of think though. I agree. It's weird to think that for me.
He has a very resonant tone in his voice. That's like it comes across so well.
But again, like the moments that Yoda and Dooku have, of course, the old Master and Apprentice doesn't get talked about that much, but it is such a unique relationship, and I love all the scenes they share together in Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars and anything else. They're just it's a
Listen to
dynamic I
Dooku
really enjoy.
Jedi.
I have to.
Yes.
I have
So
to.
good.
Yes. I co-sign Jake's.
Is
Jake's
there a
agreement
lot
there.
of that in that book? Or
There's a pretty good amount from what I can remember.
because like everyone
There's a pretty
says
good
that's
amount.
one of
It is
Kevin
much
Scott's
more of-
best.
Like a more heavy focus on like Dooku individually, but like his relationship with Yoda is definitely prominent.
Is there a lot of
we get-
Qui-Gon in that one, or
There's
not
a
really?
good
A little
amount of
bit.
Qui-Gon,
There's a little
yeah.
bit. We also get some Rail Aberos, who
Oh yeah,
one of my most underrated Star Wars characters.
Yeah, I liked Ray. Master and Apprentice.
What a G.
Yeah, he's so cool.
Also, I want to point out that like I didn't notice this until this rewatch. Ventress definitely learned from Dooku because she distracted Yoda and his clones and King Katunka and his people by putting them in quote unquote mortal danger, and then Yoda has to save them, and then she gets away. And it reminded me straight out of Attack of the Clones when Dooku escapes Yoda by doing pretty much the exact same thing. He puts Anakin and ObiWan in danger, and Yoda has to stop fighting Dooku to save them, and Dooku uses that
that's
opportunity.
such a good parallel.
So,
Yeah.
You just put that together.
I
You
know,
can just
I'm-
you can just see Dooku like saying to Ventress, "Hey, yeah. So if you ever like meet Master Yoda, you just like drop drop shit on him, and then you'll be able to get away. Because otherwise, you're not going anywhere.
I'm glad we
Yep.
have the Attack of the Clones #1 fan with us. So
Yes.
No.
I don't know if #1 fan, but like
one of the near the top.
I'm a fan.
Don't you have it #1 on your personal ranking?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's more than a lot of people can say. So it's
Yes.
always appreciated, especially because it's turning 20 in a couple weeks. I wish Lucasfilm would acknowledge that, but yeah,
They will.
hopefully.
And we're gonna get
Well,
a shit ton of stuff
I'm
for
just-
it. And
the
and
thing-
We'll see.
we're all
Hopefully,
gonna go
Star Wars
nuts.
Celebration
'Cause
goes out with it because I know
hope-
in Chicago they really did a lot for
really
Phantom Menace.
emphasized Phantom Menace, but I remember them
They
building
Okay,
that
I'll
up
have to
mo-
rewatch that.
they
I don't.
if I remember
Okay.
correctly, they built it up a lot more though beforehand,
They
and
really did, but
they're
also
not-
think about how much of a mess this whole celebration
That's
thing is. I mean,
very
it's
true.
not their fault.
I
not their
up
fault.
until about 3 weeks
Well,
ago, I still didn't
some
think
of
it
it
was
is,
happening.
but-
but
I agree. I'm genuinely shocked that they are still going through with it. The timing just doesn't really feel.
I just
Right.
think it's time. I just think having it in May is weird. It should be
Having it in May
Summer?
is weird. Yeah, I would say either August or April in Chicago. I felt like was a good
Yeah.
month, to be honest with you.
This is
but
mainly
August
just me
would have
being
been good.
salty. I can't go anymore. But like also like I just think
Fair
May
enough.
is weird, and I think we're supposed to be August, and then they're like, nah, May.
It was supposed to be August, and then it got pushed back to August of last year, and then it got pushed back to May of this year. And personally, like, obviously, we are doing decently well in terms of the pandemic, but we still aren't out of it. Having a
Yeah.
massive convention
My
is
entire
not
family
the
just had
best.
it last week, so it's
Yep.
definitely not.
And also, when you consider the fact they're leaning back on their guidelines, saying that, oh, you can just show us a negative test and you can come in. It's like, okay, when I had COVID back in January, I tested negative like 12 hours before I tested positive. So
It's an
Yeah,
apple
I
with my
wonder if
sister.
they'll,
you
uh,
never know.
I would not be surprised if they change it again to say like, yeah, fuck that. We're gonna have it back to
They-
what we had before.
They put something out the other.
On the bright side, they are mandating masks,
Yeah.
but
They put something out the other day that we'd just be able to. I would be able to transfer my ticket if I can't go anymore instead of having to outright sell it. But I haven't seen any update on that yet. So they better get on that because my window's closing on that one. So
if you can transfer it because fingers crossed I should be going in
I
2024 if that is when they do the
love
next
to
one.
go for the next one. But that is another story for another time, as Mas Kanata would say. But Ambush, again, great episode, defining episode for the series, one of the best Yoda episodes, if not the best Yoda episode. So we had 4 really solid episodes here. Out of the 4 we watched for this week, what would you say your favorite of the 4 was? Mine, honestly, was The Hidden Enemy. I had an absolute blast with that one.
I'd agree there.
I'm probably going to go for Ambush. I think Ambush is probably the one I had the most, not just most fun with, but I enjoyed just it on like just an emotional level and like, I think, yeah, it would be Ambush for me.
Yep. Ambush for me too. But that was pretty obvious when I said it was a top 10.
Yeah, when you said it was a
Clone
top
Wars
10, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to look weird for saying Hidden Enemy is my favorite. But
episode.
I'll
No,
go with
I
it.
agree there, though.
'Cause
I'm
it
also
is-
just a simp for anything on Christophsis, though. That's easily one of my favorite Star Wars planets.
Also,
Oh, yeah.
very, very
Can we talk
true.
just quickly? Can we just mention the amazing design of the moon Ragosa? That because I love the design.
Ragosa's moon
Ooh.
is fantastic.
I love the coral design. How it's such a unique location for Star Wars because it's like I love the idea of like it's a coral planet. It once had water, but it's all dried up now. So you have these amazing structures that just look so alien and so like unique. I just love it. Love amazing environment. The Clone Wars.
It is interesting how they give it like a story as to why it looks that way, though, too. And a lot of the times, Star Wars locations are just they look that way because they look that way.
Yeah, like if like for anyone listening, if you enjoy the Clone Wars episodes, look up the behind the scenes featurettes. They're on YouTube. it's great to hear like Dave Filoni and the development team talk about like designing the characters, like the thought they put into certain environments and how that informs the story and how it connects to the films. It's just really good stuff. I highly recommend it. It's very enlightening.
I just want to point out the one of the Twitter accounts I've been loving recently is the Beauty of Star Wars concept art one that's been going around. I think it's
I
at
just
Concept Art Star
followed
Wars,
them like
SW.
yesterday.
And it just had me thinking, like, seeing all of that and seeing, like, the early, like, prequel ones, like, that's the one thing that's, like, that would be such a cool career to have, would just be, like, concept artist. I just wish I could draw. Like, that is literally something I would love to do, but I have no artistic skill whatsoever. So, man. Star Wars concept art, like, the art of books are literally my favorite thing. I have all
So
of the
great.
Disney era ones, except I think they did. I don't have Mando season 2 yet, but I have all the other ones, and
I
God.
might get the Rebels one.
I have that one.
Next
it's
paycheck.
great.
I have the Rebels one as well.
The Rebels one
Yeah.
is really cool. But I think that is all for today. It was a absolute pleasure as always. Next week next time we have an episode, probably not going to be next week, but next episode we are going to be discussing the Malevolence arc, the first big arc of the series, and I may have a special surprise for you then. We'll have to wait and see. Gentlemen, where can we find you on the socials? And hope you had a good time today.
It was fantastic. I think for me at least, Clone Wars is something I never really talk about all that much when it comes to Star Wars, just because, like, I think the fandom kind of makes it out, you know, the fandom sort of kills my enjoyment for it, because the Star Wars fandom does that a lot. But being able to revisit these episodes and talk about it with you guys has really made me realize, like, yeah, I really like this show.
Yeah.
And I'm excited just to see how, you know, what happens in Clone Wars again once I, you know, continue my rewatch of it, because this will be my third time through Clone Wars, the entirety of it. Well, okay, the second time was pre-season 7, but, like, it's basically my second time. In terms of where you can find me, Twitter at DepaBanana, Instagram. Actually, I'm not even gonna plug my Instagram. I don't even use it. Here for the Republic podcast, I'm a co-host, and I'm also a co-host at the Nerd Academy podcast, which is just a nerd podcast. We have our main show, which is the title of the podcast, the Nerd Academy podcast, but we also have our Star Wars specific show, Knights of the Nerd Republic. I'm basically on there pretty much most episodes, and we have a slew of other shows and upcoming content that, like, you can check out on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, our website, the Nerd Academy Podcast.com. And then you can find me writing articles and stories super slowly at sweditorIG.com. I, Jake, and Don are a part of the SWE fiction story universe, where we write stories about Star Wars, and we adhere to what Lucasfilm has done with the canon, while also making our own unique and original characters and stories. And it's a really interesting process, but it's really fun.
Don't you guys have another story coming out soon?
We do, yes. Our first comic, actually, which by the time this episode comes out, it will probably be released. But it comes out on the 30th of April, if I'm not mistaken. It is called Redeemed and the Redeemable.
That is correct, too.
It is set during the sequel era. That is all I will say. It is really good. I'm super excited for the reception to it. Yeah, it's fun being in that universe. So
Can't wait to
It
read
is indeed.
Dom?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna echo what Connor said. It's been really great revisiting these episodes with you guys, like just digging down into the more into the more kind of nuts and bolts aspect of the plot and stuff, and getting new perspectives on just each episode. And I'm just really excited to discuss certain upcoming arcs. It was a joy to discuss stuff like Ambush. That's one I feel really personally about, which is what yeah, it was really fun talking about all of these. I'm really excited to talk about Malevolence next time, to cover some other arcs like Ryloth, Obi-Wan Undercover, the Mandalore arcs, and obviously Siege of Mandalore down the line. As for where you can find me on Twitter. I have my @ is @DonovanMead. Like Connor said, I also am part of sweditor.com, and I write articles, and I am also writing stories as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, like Don said too. I've watched Clone Wars 3 or 4 times now. I think this will be either my 4th or my 5th. But it's really cool to examine it in a much deeper way, because usually when I was watching in the past, it was just sort of passive. It was just for entertainment. Now, getting really to watch how they went about things and really examine the ways the technology changed and all that. That's really fun. I think that's my favorite thing that we've been doing in regards to that. But yeah, again, as the other two have discussed, I write at Star Wars Editor as well. Like Connor said, the new comic's coming out, written by our creator, Austin. So that's really exciting. Everybody check that out. And yeah, Twitter, I am Jedi Jake __. And for any of you that feel like you need to flock away from Twitter, on Discord, I'm always online there. Jedi Jake number 6792.
Perfect. And you can follow me on TikTok and Twitter at StarlightAndrew. You can also find me writing articles on SWEIG.com. Like the rest of these gentlemen, it's a great time. Also join the SWE Discord server, the SWE Council. It is an absolutely great fan community that I have an absolute blast every time I hop in there. Like I said, next time you'll see us, we'll be talking the Malevolence arc. But until then, for Light and Life, may the Force be with you. Always.